Welcome to the Culture Beats podcast. My guest today is author Henry Sullivan. Henry, you are the author of several novels, Coliseum, Escape from, excuse me, I'm a Northerner, Escape from New Orleans, and Dinner Invitation, right?
Correct.
As was there anything else you want listeners and viewers to know about you?
Well, I mean, I'm current like with those publications, the audiobook form of those publications involve me handing my content to a cast of actors, and then they performed the roles in the story.
Okay,
Whereas right now, on Substack, I'm serializing the novel that I'm working on now. So I'm writing it, but as I finish, as I get to a certain point, recording scenes myself in my
oh
own
wow,
voice.
okay, okay.
So is definitely a different experience, and I definitely appreciate what the voice actors did. So
Right, right. Well, we,
yeah.
we can get into that more in a bit, but can you kind of, whichever books you would like, any or all of them, can you kind of like give a brief overview of the plot?
Okay, yeah, sure. I guess I'll start with Dinner Invitation and Escape from New Orleans, because they relate to what I'm working on now. So those publications ex the stories occur in a story world that takes place mainly in the year 2046.
Okay.
And so I'm writing about the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in that world, a group of business leaders basically become the equivalent of minor lords in different parts of the United States. So, like in the novel that I'm serializing right now on Substack, the main character of the novel is Philip Harrington, who is the patriarch of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. That's his domain. There are 13 of them, and the name of this institution is called the Council of Nobles. And
Okay.
so this relates to I came up with the idea back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to the idea, I came up with all of these basically couples.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Philip Harrington and his wife, Eleanor Harrington. They have a daughter who's Irene. Back then, I had her name as Eve, but I kind of discovered pretty quickly that when you put Ellie, Eve, and
Mm-hmm.
another Eve female in there, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes very confusing for readers.
Right.
And so, 10 years later, I've sort of changed her name to Irene. And then there's another character who was Irene. Her name now is Olympia to
Okay.
keep it easy for the readers. But but back in 2010, I came up with this idea and I had all of these characters and had a bunch of stories for them and things I wanted them to do, and I could imagine them interacting with each other. And so I was sort of fortunate at the time because I started writing this. I started taking my writing seriously. And I asked around neighbors and friends if anybody knew, because Serial was a popular podcast back then.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
And so I asked them, I was like, does anyone know of any directors or actors who would want to work with me on an audio project where I'm taking my fiction and I'm creating audiobooks with it? And I've
Mm-hmm.
got
Mm-hmm.
like this story world and all these characters, and it's very political, is related to what we're going through right now. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was intense back then. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing compared to now.
Right.
Um, and so pretty quickly I got an answer, and I met Adrian Curry, who it turns out was very well known in the theater scene in Chicago. And so we started recording these stories that I was writing.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was actually Swept Away. It's the shortest one.
Okay.
Then we recorded um, Dinner Invitation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second one. And these stories involve the characters, like I said, the Harringtons. So there's Philip Harrington, there's Eleanor Harrington is his wife,
Mm-hmm.
his daughter at the time, like I said, it was Eve, now is Irene.
Mm-hmm.
And just the things that they encounter and have to deal with as these powerful people in the United States of America. Um, and of course, there's a resistance to that. And that's part of the story that I'm writing now, where the resistance is called the 0.1% watchers. and they're trying to overturn the Council of Nobles. They don't want a council.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's kind of how Escape from New Orleans. And don't worry about the fact that you're not from New Orleans. I know it's a weird. I recognize that it's a weird way to pronounce it, New Orleans. But Escape from New Orleans is the story of a guy who's involved with one of the children of these powerful people, and that Lord tries to hunt him down, and
Wow. Okay.
that's why he's trying to escape from New Orleans because they kind of have a perimeter around the city,
Hmm.
and he's an ex-soldier, so he and his buddy basically try to figure out a way to get out, and that's what the story is about. It's just a fun story. But 10, 15 years later, I've expanded the story where not only do I write in 2046,
Hmm.
I go back in the even numbered chapters to 2019.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so what I'm doing is I'm showing how we go from the type of government that we have now to a government where at the very top of it, you have a 13-member body that basically rules the whole country.
So it sounds kind of dystopian.
Well, it's funny. I had a conversation with another writer on my podcast, and we were talking about dystopian. I don't know if dystopian will really hold up as a subgenre of science fiction because
Hmm.
we're living in a dystopian era. You
True.
know?
True.
I
Yeah.
mean, you got masked men driving around in
Hmm.
unmarked cars, snatching people up and throwing, sending them to foreign prisons. I mean, that's pretty dystopian.
Yeah.
So the other thing about so it's the Council of Nobles is the podcast. That's what I'm serializing my current novel through.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing about it is my understanding of it is the only way that that the American people are going to accept a system like this
Hmm.
is if the wealthy people give something up.
Okay.
And so what I'm envisioning is this group of 13 billionaires.
Hmm.
What they basically do is they kind of promise to serve as a bulwark against the other billionaires who are sort of tearing the country apart. So people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. Um, and so what they agree to is a, a taxing regime where you tax wealth, not work.
Mm,
So
okay.
all wealth above $700 million is taxed at a rate of 70%.
Okay. Wow.
They agree to that. And it's in the law that establishes the Council of Nobles that the only way the council can exist is if they have that tax regime. If anybody tries to get rid of that, then the council no longer legitimate.
Okay.
So in that sense, it sounds dystopian on the one hand because
Mm.
we don't perceive ourselves as being ruled by oligarchs or
Uh-huh.
whatever,
Yeah.
but on the other hand it's not really dystopian in the sense that it may actually be the only way we're going to get out of this mess.
Yeah. Yeah. The kindness of millionaires and billionaires.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like I was listening because I listen to a lot of podcasts with the historians like Heather Cox Richardson
Oh,
and
right.
people like that.
Uh-huh.
And, a lot of times they'll mention as an aside that,
Hmm.
well, for the Great Society and for, the all these other different periods where we had to basically move away from the wealthiest people having everything and
Hmm.
the citizens getting something back, clawing their power back.
Hmm.
There were usually wealthy people who betrayed their class to
Okay.
make that happen.
Okay.
And that's the idea here. Now, the other thing that I have an advantage of with this story is it just so happens that our billionaires are crazy.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole idea of the event, but if you follow podcasts like the Nerd Reich, he talks about how
Okay.
in Silicon Valley, a bunch of these people believe in this event that's going to happen in our lifetimes and transform, human society. And they're all kind of building these bunkers around the world to protect themselves against the calamity.
So that's like a nuclear holocaust or
No, they're thinking of stuff like, artificial intelligence,
taking over the world or
taking over,
okay.
or like there's transhumanism,
Hmm.
where they believe that like they're going to basically advance technology to a point where the people who are willing to undergo like tremendous change, like physical transformation,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be way stronger than kind of like mutants,
Mm,
basically,
okay.
compared to other human beings.
Okay.
Um, and also, climate catastrophe and stuff
Mm,
like that. I mean,
mm-hmm.
all sorts of things. It's, when you actually listen to the things they talk about, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The only thing that you do understand is it's basically a kind of a techno version of the rapture is basically what
Okay.
they're talking about.
It sounds like the original Terminator, like the future where the robots ran everything in that corporation, whatever it's called in the movie, Cybercorp or whatever, runs
Hmm.
everything, and everyone else is kind of like underground, and
Right.
that's what it sounds like
Exactly.
they believe in.
Right. Right.
Which is
Right.
not,
Man,
yeah, which is not necessarily that far-fetched, but
right, right,
unfortunately,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And then they have so much money that they're sort of, in a way, like accelerationism. My understanding of it is it's this idea that, well, since it's going to happen anyway, if you accelerate the process, you might be able to make it happen on your terms.
Control it. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you might be able to control it. So
Okay.
and so in my story, I kind of have these up and coming billionaires
Mm-hmm.
because they invest in these advanced technologies, and they're going, they're kind of socializing with the billionaires who have been around before them, and they're basically coming to the conclusion these people are crazy.
Mm.
I mean, it's like we're not like any of these people. And with all the other political things that happen, because that's the thing about my writing is even I did the same thing in Coliseum, which is I have scenes that are essentially snippets of what's actually happening.
Okay.
So in Coliseum, for instance, the first thing you encounter in the story is a scene that takes place in Lansing, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
where these guys are dressed in camouflage and they have like all these weapons and stuff, and they're protecting the Capitol building against a protest rally, a women's rights protest rally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I did it that way is I found in workshopping the novel Colosseum that even though the people in my writing group are generally aware of political events,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't necessarily mean that you're thinking about the types of themes that I'm going to explore in chapter one or chapter two or chapter three and so on. And so before each chapter, I have a little vignette like that to sort of put in your head what I'm exploring in this chapter that's coming up. And in this case, it's the whole idea of a Confederate flag
Mm.
and the Confederacy,
Mm-hmm.
because they're in Lansing, Michigan, and they're waving Confederate flags,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just to kind of level set that we know that the Confederacy was in the South, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the only people who believe in this.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, how did you decide to serialize the latest novel? And there's obviously a long history of writers serializing their work from
Hmm.
Charles Dickens to I think The Martian. That was serialized on Twitter back when it was Twitter at
Oh,
first.
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. How did
Well,
you come to that conclusion?
Well, I started spending a lot of time on Substack.
Okay.
I was drawn to Substack because a bunch of people that I'd been following who were usually just guests on cable news like Paul Krugman. Um, and now you even have people who were hosts on cable news like Don Lemon, Joy
All right.
Reid.
Yeah.
Um, I found myself watching a lot of YouTube videos, which it turned out had originated from Substack.
Right.
So I started spending a lot of time on Substack, and I found that it would be a perfect place to, or at least my idea back then was to create my own Substack to sort of give all this information about the story world because there's a lot that you need to sort of understand about it. Um, and it was clear to me that the thing about Substack, because if you are familiar with Don Lemon or Joy Reid or even Paul Krugman before when they were on cable news, and
Hmm.
if you watch their interviews now, the first thing that strikes you is they're a lot more, you see more of them. You see
Right.
much more of their personality,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially Don Lemon.
Yeah.
You see a lot more of his personality.
Yeah.
Um, and that's because Substack is all about authenticity. It's not, it's trying not to be sort of staid and controlled and corporate the
Hmm.
way cable news is
Hmm.
still.
Hmm.
Um, and so, even though once I'm done with Emperor, that's the novel that I'm serializing right now. Once I'm done with Emperor, I'm going to hand it over just like I did with the other novels to a cast of voice actors,
Hmm.
and then they'll do their thing, performing the roles, and there'll be post production and all that kind of stuff. But as I'm working on this, it just didn't make sense to me to try and get anybody else to record the scenes. I need to do it in my voice.
Right.
Um, and so that's how that came about, the idea of, well, in addition to just information about the story world, 2046 America, the Council of Nobles, I can basically record the scenes that I know are done, as I'm going along, and I just do that every 2 weeks. I publish a scene,
Hmm.
so I have one that I'm going to do in a day or two, and that's how it came about.
Does that come naturally to you, sort reading the work, and are you just sort of reading it, or are you like performing it like an actor would?
No, I'm just reading it. I'm just
Okay.
reading it
Okay.
because I don't have any acting chops whatsoever. And it's interesting you asked the question naturally, because the thing that I noticed was there were times where I'll basically set the whole thing up. I'm using Audacity to record
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
and so I'll pull up the scene and I'll start reading it, and whatever it is with my voice or that day or whatever, it'll come out essentially the way I want it to come out. It'll sound the way I want it to sound. And the only thing I have to do is just do the post production of making sure that, I edit out, little, burps and blips and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But it basically sounds from the beginning the way I want it to sound. The scene that I need to record now, for whatever reason, is just not coming out that way. And the difference between being, an experienced artist in one art form versus
Hmm.
another art form is I don't have a process to make it sound the way I want it to sound.
Okay.
So it's like I don't really know how to do that. It's not really something I want to learn how to do. I'm just giving
Right.
myself time, I keep trying, and hopefully in the next day or two it'll just sound the way I know it needs to sound.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to perform it. That's the other reason why I just publish it. It is time consuming, but it's
Hmm.
become part of my writing process though.
Hmm.
And so, like having to actually go through, listen to the recording that I made, make the edits and stuff like that, it really makes me think about my writing choices. Why did I choose this word versus that? Does that sentence really sound well? Does that paragraph work? So it's become part of my writing process.
That's really interesting. I could see that becoming a lot of writers using that process now that we have the technology to do that.
Yeah.
Because decades ago, it was just you had a typewriter or a pen and
Yeah.
paper. I mean, now we have obviously computers, but I mean, I can see a lot of writers getting into that process of because something does sound completely or it sounds completely different when you read it aloud as opposed to just reading it on the page.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And actually that's the structure of my writing group. My writing group,
Hmm.
what we do is we meet once a week,
Okay,
and we submit, like excerpts from whatever we're working on. Someone else reads it aloud to the group,
okay,
not you.
okay.
And what it does is it tricks your mind into, it's almost like that's the closest thing I'll ever come to what a reader hears.
Right, right.
And the other thing about that is they read what's on the page. They don't read what you think is on the page.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
the
so,
words that they see on the page. Yeah.
yeah, they read the actual text.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
But there, I mean, there are some other benefits too. Like if you wrote something humorous in the scene, sometimes it'll work so well that the person laughs and like has to take a break.
Yeah, yeah,
That's when you really know you nailed it. So it really there's a lot of benefit there too to like just getting real time reactions from a reader right
right.
there. Um, Go
Yeah,
ahead.
a lot of programs now, like Word has a read aloud function. Do you think that
Right.
there's a difference in hearing a live human reading it as opposed to an AI voice?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
absolutely a difference. I mean, there's a difference in hearing my own voice recorded versus
Uh-huh.
hearing someone in my group read it. And
Okay.
to be honest, I don't know if they'll ever see this, but there's actually a difference depending on who reads it.
Sure. Uh-huh.
It's like, there's like a difference in what some people read better than other people.
Hmm.
Even though in my group, we've been doing it for years. And so we all read fairly well. Um, but like it depends on what, the profile of the character. If the character's a woman, having one of the women in my group read it is
Hmm.
different from having a guy read it. So I mean, all of those elements make a big difference.
Right. You know, I've heard that for some reason, even though women make up the majority of readers from what I hear, that when it comes to audiobooks, listeners prefer a male voice, even if it's like a female-centric story. I don't know why. I guess it's just the sexism that's embedded in our society, but
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. That sounds like
uh-huh.
a realistic stat to me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, it's kind of a shame because I've heard some great, in fact, for Coliseum, there are some great female performances.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, there's a cast for Coliseum for all of my audiobooks, and the narrator was also cast, and so the narrator for Coliseum is a British voice actor named Billy Fourfoot Brown, and she's just awesome. She's won awards and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
what you're saying sounds like it's probably true because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and most of those audiobooks are performed by men,
Right, right. So when
even
you're
even when they're female characters.
right, right, which is yeah, it's just like why can't women even play women's
Right.
parts in audiobooks? But
Right.
so
And
how
you
do
would
you go
think that,
about casting your audiobooks when you're going to record the audio version?
well, the one thing I would say for writers who are interested in this, rely on the other actors
Okay.
because that's one thing that I learned when I started producing audiobooks back in the 2010 2012 period. I relied a lot on Adrian because, you know, it's like when it comes to the art of acting,
Hmm.
I'm more like just a typical consumer, whereas I'm
Oh,
not
right.
I'm not as able to sort of appreciate what's going on under the hood the
Uh-huh.
way I'm able to do with writing.
Uh-huh.
And so what we did is, like I said, she's really well known in the theater scene in Chicago.
Okay.
And so it was easy for her to kind of put out a call. She would send out little excerpts from my work and say, record yourself performing this role and then send it back to us.
Okay.
And it really was amazing. I mean, a person who is either inexperienced or didn't get the character or just wasn't right for it
Hmm.
fell flat on the recording, whereas a person who really got it would really shine. So that
Hmm.
part you could really, stand out. And if you had two people who were competing for the same role, that's when I would rely on Adrian. She's like, well, actually, this person is better.
Okay.
I'm like, well, they both sound similar to me, so I'll go ahead and rely on you for that. But yeah, I definitely think that unless you have experience
Hmm.
in theater or movies or whatever,
Hmm.
that yeah, you should rely as much as you can on the people in that field.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like a musician having a trained ear because it's like
Yes.
musician friends of mine, they can like we can hear the same song and they'll be like, "Oh, did you hear that bass line?" I'll be like, "What bass line?" I can't,
Right.
it's so deep that I don't even it doesn't even register to me as like as bass. But yeah, that
Right.
makes sense. So why did you choose the um the route of having actors portray the characters rather than a lot of audiobooks just have one narrator? Why did you choose to have it acted out rather than just read by a narrator?
So the reason is, and like I said, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I think that the style of one narrator performing the entire story works when, and this is the case for a lot of books, you're talking about a small community where most of the characters sound the same anyway.
Okay, okay.
And so you might have a small community in like Kentucky or Ohio or
Mm-hmm.
Scotland or Ireland
Mm-hmm.
somewhere
Mm-hmm.
where everybody's basically going to have the same accent because
Sure.
they're all from the same place. And so the only challenge for the actor is you need the local cop to sound like a cop. You need the local doctor to sound like a doctor. You need the old woman to sound like an old woman and the drunk to sound like a drunk. That's it. But basically, they're all going to have the same accent. I don't write stories like that.
Okay.
All of my stories, the characters are all extremely different. That's a feature of my world. And so I'll have a character from a small town in Arizona, a character from Manhattan, New York, a character from who grew up in the Virginia area around DC, who actually was born in the UK. I
Wow.
mean, those are the kind of characters I write. So none of my characters sound the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's the reason why it just makes sense. I mean, I've heard every now and then I'll listen to an audiobook and I'll listen to the whole thing where the characters are like that, but because of cost, probably
Mm-hmm.
they chose to go with one actor
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the same. It's just
Right.
not the same,
Right. That's for sure.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing that I had read in your bio is that you have LGBTQ characters and you consider yourself an ally. So how do you handle that? Do you have, friends in the LGBT community that act as sensitivity readers, or how do you handle those issues?
Well, that's one thing. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and really it's true of almost anything. Like, I mean, the
Hmm.
first thing that was striking to me is because I've been in a lot of writing groups
Hmm.
and I'll write female characters. And, when you have a situation where all of the women in the group say exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
even though it doesn't make any sense to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like I do what they told me to do. I
Yeah.
just do what they told me to do. And so that really carries on to pretty much anything. And that's kind of my thinking when it comes to LGBTQ
Hmm.
characters.
Hmm.
Um, and so, plus, I also listen to a wide variety of fiction. So,
Okay.
I felt comfortable because with Colosseum, just real quick, because I talked about Emperor, with Colosseum is a story about a television show. Colosseum is a television show where you have gladiators on the Confederate team battling it out with gladiators on the American team, and is produced by a guy named Smiling Jack. And the violence of the show inspires a serial killer who calls himself the Archangel.
Mm.
And he's in the Christian nationalist community.
Hmm.
And so his massacres are being done within the context of that ideology. And so there's a manhunt once he starts killing people. There's a manhunt, and the manhunt involves the director of the field office in uh, um, Las Vegas,
Hmm.
Nevada,
Hmm.
and a transgender Mexican woman who grew up in Arizona, who is part of the Department of Homeland Security working as an analyst. That's Vicky Morales.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was comfortable writing Vicky because I'd listened to a couple of novels where transgender characters were handled, and it made me realize, oh, okay, these are like just using the tools of fiction. This is how you would handle a situation like this.
Hmm.
And so I kind of felt like I had good examples on how to write the characters.
Okay. So something that is a big part, I would assume, of your identity is being a native New Orleanian. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, yeah, yes, you did.
Yeah. So, and then you came up to where I live, Columbus, to attend Ohio State for law school. So we were talking before we were recording about that was a big culture shock. So I would imagine is the culture of New Orleans and Louisiana, is that a big part of the series?
um, I think. What it is, but in
Uh,
ways that might surprise people. Like New Orleanians are actually pretty blunt,
okay.
and we're I mean at least most of the ones that were in my life growing up.
Hmm.
And we're also very cynical. And so what comes across as warm and friendly is actually more blunt, cynical, and humorous.
Okay.
It's just that if you're not used to that, and the other thing about like most of the people that I've grew up with is we're very comfortable talking to people as if we've known you forever.
Okay.
And so you have that combination, and it sort of creates this, um, I don't know, just a sort of frankness,
Hmm.
a sort of, what you see is what you get sort of thing. And
Hmm.
my writing sort of has that. And so I deal with a lot of social issues,
Hmm.
but I don't do it in a way that's judgmental. So,
Hmm.
one of the things that some of the writers in my writing group have said about Coliseum is like, depending on your political point of view, you
Hmm.
could either see irony in this novel or you could see a bunch of good ideas.
Wow. Okay.
So even though, Christian nationalists or there are Christian nationalist characters in the novel, that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that a Christian nationalist person would be offended or not like the novel. They might actually not like the novel because the characters in the novel who are Christian nationalists might come across to them as heroes.
Okay.
Because I don't write it where it's just like this is declaratively wrong or
Hmm.
this is declaratively right. What I do
Hmm.
is I just write the characters.
Hmm.
They interact with each other. They state their views. So the Christian nationalist characters in Colosseum believe that God is white,
Hmm.
God is male,
Hmm.
and white people are holy. That's just what they believe. So I don't have any judgments about that. That's just what they believe.
Hmm.
You know. So that's the way I write my fiction.
So it sounds like the reader can literally read whatever they want or interpret your books in whatever way that their worldview allows them to see the world.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly right. So, I mean, like two different people coming at it from different points of view, they might both really like it, but they'll like it for totally different reasons.
Right. Right. And it sounds like that was intentional on your part that you weren't necessarily trying to preach or come up with a moral to the story, so to speak. It's what the reader gets out of it.
That's exactly right. And it's kind of always sort of a party element to it. In fact, I
Okay.
mean, unlike most writers, there's almost always a party scene in the work.
How could you not
know?
in New Orleans have a not have a nonstop party going on?
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's always like, I actually spend time where the characters actually have a big dinner,
Okay.
or they go out to enjoy themselves or they
Hmm.
go to a gathering of some kind. So to me, that's just part of life. And so of course it's part of the story.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it reflects my background because of those aspects of it. Because New Orleanians, I mean, you're talking about a city where people walk down the street with a drink in their hand. So
Right.
it's not going to be a judgmental city.
Yeah.
you know?
Right. So when you see New Orleans, your hometown, depicted in books and movies and TV shows, do you see authenticity, or does it just depend on what, the book or movie or TV show? Because it seems like it's a very, very popular setting.
It
A
is.
lot of writers and filmmakers find it, which it
Yeah.
is, it's a fascinating city.
Right.
What do you think of the depictions of your city?
Well, I mean, they're usually, I feel like cities like New York are more accurately depicted, but I
Okay.
think that's
Okay.
also because the art tends to involve native New Yorkers.
Right.
And so
That's
you're going to
true.
have and same thing with LA. You have people from LA
Yeah.
making the movie or the TV show or whatever.
Yeah.
That's rarely ever the case with New Orleans.
Okay.
Um, I appreciate genuine attempts to capture New Orleans culture. Like there was a sitcom called Frank's Place years
Oh
ago. I don't know
yeah,
if you
with Tim
remember.
Reed. Yeah. Yeah.
He actually did a very good job of capturing like some aspects of New Orleans culture. I mean, he really did like, you know, and it was sort of interesting. I was surprised that the show lasted as long as it did because I was just like, well, do people really understand what he's showing here? I
Mm.
wasn't I wasn't sure because it was so specific to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he did a very good job of trying to capture like some of the really nuanced aspects of our culture. Um, I'm trying to think in the movie because the movie JFK took place in New Orleans,
Okay.
and what the one thing that stood out is there was one character who was an actor from New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't the like how what's his name was the main lawyer. What's the popular who was the
Uh,
main lawyer?
Kevin Costner.
Yeah, Kevin Costner.
Uh-huh.
He didn't, I mean, that was not a New Orleans accent. I don't even remember. It didn't even really sound Southern to me,
Uh-huh.
but he had an assistant with black guy with black hair.
Mm-hmm.
That guy was from New Orleans. And
Okay.
so the way he talked in the movie
Mm-hmm.
was genuine. It was authentic. He had a genuine accent. Um, and so that sort of thing sort of it really stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to think of some other examples. There aren't that many because, like I said, the problem is that you don't have New Orleanians involved in the project,
Right.
and that's usually the problem.
Right. Did you watch any shows like Treme? And I think Treme did have some New Orleanians involved in
Yeah,
at least
well,
being some
actually, yeah,
color.
it did, and I tried to watch Treme. I give it 100. I give it points for authenticity. It was
Mm-hmm.
100%
Mm-hmm.
authentic. To me, the problem is that the stories weren't as compelling, and maybe I had the expectation because I loved The Wire.
Yeah.
And so maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was looking for the wire in New Orleans, and that wasn't really the goal. So
Right.
it's like Treme, I think I watched maybe 3 episodes or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I just couldn't get into it. But I mean, it was authentic. I'll give it
Okay.
that much. It just couldn't even compare to The Wire. I just thought The Wire was so much better.
Right. Right. Yeah, and we were talking about your time at Ohio State was a culture shock because even though I grew up in Columbus and I don't perceive it as a conservative place, I can imagine coming from New Orleans. It's, because you definitely can't unless it's like they have these special areas where you can walk around with a drink with an
Hmm.
alcoholic drink.
Right.
I would imagine it was a culture shock, even just being
Yeah.
here
Or
for school.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it came now I understand what you were saying about, well, if you look at, the party of the people who had held office on these different levels of government, you,
Yeah.
you can't really say that's conservative, but to your point about just the culture, it seems conservative in a way, even though Ohio State is a party school. So
Right.
so that kind of the conservatism is thrown out of the water from Thursday to like Saturday night.
Uh-huh.
Because it's kind of a crazy campus, and it reminded me a lot of Tulane University. Tulane is the same way, except it's like that from like Wednesday to Sunday.
Uh-huh.
um so I mean, there's that aspect of it, but in terms of the culture of the city of Columbus, it did feel sort of conservative to me. But look at the standard that I'm working with. I mean,
Hmm.
New York feels conservative to me
Oh,
because,
interesting.
oh, it's so traditional. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's so many cultures here that still have a connection to the country that the community originated from.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of those cultures still sort of value the old,
Okay.
besides the fact that like downtown New Orleans, the French Quarter is the old part of New Orleans, but most of the rest of New Orleans is a lot newer.
Okay.
Whereas it just feels like all of New York is old.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and people just value the way things always have been, it seemed to me here. So it really does depend on where you're coming from. A lot of places seem conservative, strike me as conservative, compared to what I've known. Chicago didn't seem that conservative to me. It's kind of it has like the loose, gregarious, you know, disrespect for rules sort of thing that I was very familiar with in growing up in New Orleans. In fact, Chicagoans just almost sort of despise rules.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so that felt very at home to me. Um, whereas a lot of other places aren't like that.
How does the food compare in Chicago? Because I mean, I know Chicago has a lot of different ethnic neighborhoods
That's true.
and a lot of different kinds of food to choose from. But you know, New Orleans is one of the cuisine capitals of the world. So how does the food compare in Chicago?
The way it comes across to me is Chicagoans put a lot of thought and effort and time into what I consider to be a snack. So, like, they'll have like a hot dog, and the hot dog will have all kinds of stuff on it. And,
Yeah,
I mean, and that'll be their meal. Whereas to me, a hot dog is just something you eat until you can sit down and actually have a meal. That's what it is to me.
right,
Now,
right.
I do prefer Chicago pizza to New
Hmm.
York pizza. I do.
The deep dish,
Um,
Chicago, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But at the same time, pizza is same thing. It's a snack, It's not
Okay,
it's not a meal really.
okay.
It's just one thing. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's the main difference to me. Chicagoans, there are a lot of really um uh tasty snacks in Chicago. That's what you'll get. And of course you have like you said, there are a lot of ethnic neighborhoods where
Hmm.
you'll have a really good Mexican restaurant or a really good Ukrainian restaurant or a really good
Hmm.
Italian restaurant. So you have that too. Um, in fact, you have a lot of variety in Chicago. That's the one thing I've noticed compared to other big cities is that you have different levels in Chicago. So you don't necessarily have to spend 50, $60 a person in Chicago, at least not when I was there,
Hmm.
for a decent meal. You
Right.
can find a place that's pretty good, but you can spend 25, $20 to $30 a person. That's really hard in Manhattan. That's
Yeah,
not easy in Manhattan,
not at
you
all.
know.
Yeah, not even for a snack.
Yeah, not even for a
Yeah.
snack. Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, I just don't think Chicago can function that way because you have a really wide variety of income levels in Chicago proper.
Hmm.
And so, it's just you can't sustain a city. I mean, you wouldn't be able to sustain a restaurant if your price point is like 50, $60 minimum.
Right, right,
Whereas Manhattan has enough people with that kind of money, so it's no big deal to them, you
right,
know.
right. How often do you get back home to New Orleans? Do you still have family down there? Or?
I do still have family down there, not as often as I used to. It's just, I mean, for one thing, I'm not looking to fly much now
Oh
because I
yeah.
just feels like the incompetence.
Oh right. Planes falling out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm just not looking to fly, and it's not because I'm afraid to fly. That's not the reason.
Hmm.
Um, so that sort of limits where I'm willing to go. And it's just there's so many other places. If I were going to take the time out to travel, I would go somewhere else. But yeah, I do still have family in New Orleans, and I
Okay.
used to go home a lot
Hmm.
actually,
Hmm.
but I just haven't been going home as much recently.
Yeah, the times that I've been down there, I've had a great time. Like I've been to the Essence Festival a few
Oh, okay,
times.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then I actually went one time for Mardi Gras the year before Katrina. So I'm glad I got to see the city before Katrina. And then
yep.
last year, actually last spring, for the first time, I went to the Jazz and Heritage Fest because I got to see Irma Thomas and Harry
Okay,
Connick Jr.
okay.
But I love seeing them, but the sound was horrible. I
Oh,
don't know.
was it?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but people around me were commenting on how bad the sound was. You could barely hear Irma Thomas, and yeah,
So
even with
was
Harry.
it? So was it in the fairgrounds? Was it in the
It was in,
fairgrounds
yeah,
or was it?
it was in the fairgrounds, and I don't know if it was just something was wrong with the speakers, but like Harry Connick Jr. was telling a lot of anecdotes between songs, and you couldn't really understand what he was saying.
Okay.
And yeah, all the people all around me were saying like, "What? You can't understand him."
That's a shame because I
Yeah.
mean I've been to the Jazz Fest a bunch of times and that never
Hmm.
happened. So it must have just been somebody screwed up or something. That's why I asked whether or not it was in the fairgrounds because
Yeah.
if they had different management and tried to do it differently, then that might explain it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's too bad
Yeah.
because I've seen some great performances at the Jazz Fest.
Yeah, yeah, and I enjoyed the experience. It was just maybe it was
Hmm.
just the stage where I was at because
Maybe.
yeah, some of the smaller stages, the sound was fine. Like because I love
Hmm.
Zydeco music. In fact,
Oh, okay.
CJ Chenier is actually coming here in February. So I
Okay.
love that, like, accordion Zydeco kind of music.
How did you get exposed to Zydeco? I mean, that's
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I've always loved all different types of music, and we actually have a
wow.
festival here in Columbus called Hot Times. It's kind of and
Okay.
it's sort of like a very small version of the Jazz Festival. And
Hmm.
CJ Chenier came, Buckwheat Zydeco came one time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So yeah, I can't tell you like there was one origin point, but like I love songs like My Toot Toot and Ya Ya, Waiting for My Ya Ya and Cornbread, all those different songs.
Wow, I'm impressed. You know that you
And of course the Marsalis family. I'm a big fan of them, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. In fact, I got to see the Preservation Hall Jazz Band too
Okay.
when last spring, and that was one reason why. Because I every year I was like, I'm going to make it down to the jazz festival, and
Hmm.
yeah, just finances and stuff it was never
Right.
feasible. Then I was like, where am I going to see all these like classic New Orleans acts all in one bill?
Wow. Well, I'm kind of sorry to hear that one time you went down there, especially for Harry Connick Jr.'s stage, because you
Yeah,
would think
yeah,
that they would make sure that his stage was together.
right. You think?
So yeah, that's too bad. But it's like with everything else, it's like things, if you don't have the same management, people
Yeah,
making sure that things are a certain level, a certain way, things gradually fall apart, you know.
yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah, and I just love the energy of the city. Like, cause I flew in, but I actually ended up walking to the fairgrounds, just being
Hmm.
cheap. I didn't I didn't want to take an Uber, and just seeing people playing music on the street. I love that.
Right.
Yeah, with a
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a
yeah.
hat up turn, taking tips or whatever. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things, and I hope it's still like all of this return because I started going into French Quarter when I was in high school, actually.
Hmm.
And I distinctly remember going to like hanging out in the French Quarter. We decided to go to a jazz club called Snug Harbor.
Okay.
And it didn't cost much money to get in there because this was like a Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. And
Hmm.
it was speaking of, because I think you said that you like violins. Um, there was a guy, he was a soloist on the violin,
Okay.
and it was a trio. And like all he had on was some jeans and like a
Mm.
regular shirt. It didn't look like he was trying, it looked like he was almost practicing for
Okay.
like the weekend or something like that.
Right. Right.
And a couple of people in the audience were musicians as well. And at one point, one of the guys got up and he was like, I'm going to have my friend play with us, And like that turned out to be one of the best performances I have ever seen because it was just these guys jamming on
Yeah.
like a Tuesday, Wednesday night,
Yeah.
you know? So I mean, it's that was the kind of thing that I especially later on really appreciated about my city, the city that I grew up in. It doesn't happen everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, because in Columbus, I mean, there's a lot of talented musicians, but unless there's a festival going on, or unless it's like a certain areas of the city, like the short north on weekends, you will see street musicians here and there, but it's not like New Orleans or Nashville or
Hmm.
Memphis, where it's just music is the live music is the pulse of the city. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, Henry, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I can't wait to read the series. And if people want to get in touch with you and they want to read, well, obviously subscribe to you on Substack, right?
Right. Yeah. So the thing is I publish through KDP, so that's how my books are
Okay.
published on Amazon.
Hmm.
They have for Audible, there is another service called ACX. I don't know if
Hmm.
people are familiar with that. So
Right.
I'm through ACX. But in addition to that, I publish through Authors Republic. And what that allows me to do is anywhere that you get music,
Hmm.
especially if you're able to also listen to podcasts. So, depending on what part of the world you're in, that could be Storytel, TuneIn,
Hmm.
it could be audiobooks.com, just almost any place. If you do a search for Henry L. Sullivan III Coliseum
Okay.
or Escape from New Orleans or Dinner Invitation, you'll find me.
Okay.
I mean, it's all these audiobooks are available on literally dozens of platforms.
Okay. Well, I listen to audiobooks all the time, so I'm definitely going to download your series and check it out.
Okay, yeah, I think you'll find get a really big kick out of Escape from New Orleans. It's we had a lot of fun
Yeah,
recording that.
yeah.
So it's just a crazy story. Pretty wild.
Do you have any social media handles that people can follow you on?
Uh, I don't know, but I mean, there's Henry Sullivan writer on Facebook.
Okay,
I do have X. I think that's just Henry Sullivan the third. I'm also on LinkedIn. Um, and all of those links are on my Substack page.
okay,
So if I think it's Substack at Henry L. Sullivan 3.
okay. All
Yep.
right. Well, Henry, again, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Thanks for having me.
All right. If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.